Iran may have just committed the most consequential strategic miscalculation of the 21st century, and the full weight of what that means is only now becoming clear. A military doctrine 4 decades in the making, built underground, buried beneath mountains, reinforced with steel and concrete, designed to be impenetrable and unassailable, the ultimate insurance policy against any adversary that dared challenge Iran's grip over the world's most critical waterway, has been dismantled, not damaged, not degraded, dismantled entirely. And what has gone largely untold is the full story of the weapons used to destroy it, the strategy behind every move, and what it all reveals about the future of warfare. To understand the full picture, it is essential to understand the logic behind Iran's opening move, because it was not reckless. It was calculated, deliberate, and executed at the most economically painful moment possible. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran in an operation named Operation Epic Fury. The opening phase was breathtaking in its scale. According to multiple defense intelligence sources, the strikes targeted Iranian missiles, air defense systems, military infrastructure, and Iranian leadership directly, with nearly 900 strikes conducted in the first 12 hours alone. The opening strike killed the supreme leader. Iran's response was immediate. Retaliatory missile and drone barrages struck American military bases across the region, Gulf state territory, Israeli cities, and commercial shipping moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And then Iran played what it believed to be its ultimate trump card. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. That phrase sounds like a headline, but what it actually represents is a civilizational-level economic emergency. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. That sliver of water is the single passage through which approximately 20 million barrels of oil move every single day, nearly 20% of all global seaborne oil trade. Before the conflict, approximately 138 ships passed through that channel daily: tankers, cargo vessels, LNG carriers, and container ships. By mid-March, that number had collapsed to 3 ships per day. Brent crude oil crossed $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years, eventually peaking at $126 per barrel. Analysts described the closure as the largest disruption to global energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis, not the Gulf War, not Iraq, the 1970s. Iran enforced the closure through 3 layered and deliberate mechanisms. The first was mines. At least a dozen sophisticated limpet mines were laid silently across the strait, invisible from the surface, engineered to detonate on contact, designed to deny passage to any vessel that dared approach. The second layer was fast attack boats, hundreds of speedboats affiliated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps operating in coordinated swarm configurations, attacking commercial ships from multiple angles simultaneously, too fast and too numerous for any single vessel to defend against. By mid-March, at least 21 attacks on merchant vessels had been confirmed. The third layer, and the one that kept military planners awake at night, was Iran's shore-launched anti-ship cruise missiles. Weapons such as the an Iranian adaptation of a Chinese missile with a range of 120 to 170 kilometers, the Qatar, an upgraded variant capable of engaging targets up to 300 kilometers away, and the most dangerous of all, the Abu Mahdi, with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers, capable of striking vessels before they even entered the strait. These missiles were not sitting on open launch pads. They were concealed inside hardened underground bunkers carved directly into the mountainous terrain along Iran's coastline, constructed over decades and protected by reinforced concrete and solid rock. Iran had every reason to believe those bunkers were untouchable. They were wrong. On March 17, 2026, U.S. Central Command released a statement that sent shockwaves through the global defense community. American forces had successfully deployed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The weapon was the GBU-72 Advanced 5K penetrator, and it was being used in actual combat for the very first time. The engineering behind it is remarkable, and the fact that Iran never accounted for its existence is the precise reason their entire strategy collapsed. The GBU-72 is a precision-guided bunker-busting bomb weighing approximately 5,000 pounds. It uses a GPS and inertial navigation guidance system derived from the JDAM architecture, meaning clouds, smoke, darkness, and electronic jamming are all irrelevant. It finds its target regardless of conditions, striking with an accuracy of just a few meters. But the truly devastating feature is what happens after impact. The bomb does not explode on contact with the surface. Its elongated steel body is specifically engineered to minimize air resistance and concentrate maximum kinetic force onto the smallest possible impact point. When it hits, it does not stop. It plunges through, penetrating 100 feet of compacted earth or over 20 feet of reinforced concrete before its delayed fuse triggers detonation. The bomb is already inside the structure when it explodes. In a confined underground space, the shockwave has nowhere to go. The pressure expands inward. The structure is not hit from the outside. It is destroyed from the inside. The GBU-72 was developed specifically to fill a critical gap in the American arsenal, sitting between the older GBU-28, which had been in service since 1991, and the far larger, far scarcer GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. By deploying the GBU-72 against Iran's coastal missile infrastructure, planners preserved their limited stockpile of the larger weapon for higher priority targets, specifically anything nuclear. Multiple GBU-72 bombs were dropped on the hardened underground tunnels carved into the mountains along the northern shores of the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran had stored its entire arsenal of anti-ship cruise missiles. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper delivered the assessment that ended the debate. Iran's missile stockpile had been reduced by 90%. That is not damage. That is elimination. But destroying the missile sites was not sufficient because the Strait still held fast, mobile, swarming threats operating on the surface, and those required an entirely different kind of weapon. The second decisive platform in this modern maritime conflict was an aircraft designed in the 1970s. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, widely known as the Warthog, became an essential instrument of this campaign. At its core is the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barreled 30mm rotary cannon capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute, capable of shredding a fast attack boat in seconds. But the A-10's decisive advantage is not just raw firepower. It is what military planners call persistent loiter time. The aircraft flies low and slow, closer to a propeller plane in speed than a jet fighter, allowing it to circle a target area for extended periods while maintaining continuous visual and fire control over a wide zone. In practice, it functions as a flying weapons platform that can remain on station for hours, watching and eliminating anything that moves on the water below. A-10s were deployed specifically to hunt and destroy fast attack boat swarms in the Strait, paired with AH-64E Apache attack helicopters using Hellfire missiles and their own 30mm cannons to eliminate mobile threats along the Iranian coastline simultaneously. Iran's swarm boat strategy, the backbone of its asymmetric naval warfare doctrine, collapsed. The fast attack boats that had been disrupting Strait traffic began suffering catastrophic and irreplaceable losses. As an additional effect, while A-10s remained airborne over the Strait, no Iranian vessel could surface to lay additional mines, making the mine-clearing operations already underway dramatically safer. Perhaps the most significant development that most coverage failed to properly address was the operational debut of unmanned autonomous drone boats. Pentagon officials confirmed publicly for the first time that autonomous drone vessels were actively patrolling the Strait of Hormuz throughout the operation. The platform was a 5-meter-long autonomous speedboat produced by a Maryland-based defense technology firm. Capable of fully autonomous navigation without a human operator on board, these vessels conducted patrols totaling over 450 operational hours during the campaign, with a range exceeding 2,200 nautical miles. Their primary mission was surveillance and early warning, but they carried a secondary capability that Iranian fast attack boat crews needed to understand clearly. When redirected, these vessels could be converted into kamikaze attack vehicles, autonomous weapons costing a fraction of a conventional warship and requiring zero risk to human life. Iran had been attacking oil tankers with naval drones throughout the conflict. The autonomous patrol boat deployment was the answer. America was no longer simply responding to asymmetric warfare, it was conducting it. The operation that fundamentally altered the psychological calculus of the conflict came with a targeted strike on Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the highest-ranking officer directly responsible for the Strait of Hormuz closure and the mine-laying campaign. He was killed in an airstrike in the strategic port city of Bandar Abbas. The message from Israeli leadership was unambiguous, that opponents would be tracked down individually. The U.S. Secretary of Defense summarized the outcome bluntly during a cabinet meeting, stating that Iran no longer had a Navy or a naval commander, not weakened, not degraded, gone. Independent military analysis confirmed the assessment. More than 120 Iranian naval vessels across both the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy and the IRGC Navy had been destroyed or incapacitated since operations began. Major naval facilities at the entrance to the Strait, along with installations in the Gulf of Oman, were struck within the first hours of the conflict using Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from American destroyers. Satellite imagery of the main naval base showed its largest support ship visibly ablaze at its pier. Zooming out from individual strikes reveals something historically unprecedented in its intensity and scope. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers flew from the American mainland on 37-hour non-stop missions, refueling multiple times in flight, striking Iran's deep underground facilities. Iran's air defense systems could not detect them. B-1B Lancers conducted 34-hour global strike missions against anti-ship missile depots using precision-guided bombs against coastal batteries and underground silos. B-52 Stratofortresses joined the campaign, striking drone storage depots, torpedo production facilities, and coastal launch platforms, maintaining continuous pressure over Iranian territory for hours at a time. By the operation's fifth week, more than 11,000 targets had been struck, more than 11,000 combat sorties had been flown, and over 150 Iranian vessels had been damaged or destroyed. CENTCOM confirmed the operation was not merely targeting active weapon systems. It was systematically dismantling the industrial infrastructure beneath them, the production lines, the logistics networks, and the command structures that would allow Iran to regenerate its capabilities over time. A naval drone storage facility near the Strait was completely destroyed within 8 days of identification. An attack drone production facility in Tehran was rendered inoperable less than a week after it was located. The Azd Military Depot, a critical missile command facility responsible for producing both light and heavyweight torpedoes, was struck with all 8 of its production buildings destroyed. This was not simply a military campaign, it was the systematic elimination of Iran's capacity to fight this war again. And yet, even after all of that, after underground bunkers collapsed, the naval fleet was decimated, the IRGC Navy commander killed, the missile stockpile reduced by 90%, and drone factories targeted, Iran was not fully finished. Hidden mobile launchers survived the campaign. Stockpiled drones remained. Iran's capacity to produce Shahed-type kamikaze UAVs in significant quantities was not completely eliminated. And critically, every mine already laid in the Strait was still there. Even as its conventional military capability crumbled, Tehran recognized it still held economic leverage. In an extraordinary move, Iran began demanding a $2 million transit fee from tankers attempting to pass through the Strait, while simultaneously allowing its own oil exports and ships from selected friendly nations to proceed freely. On March 26th, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced that vessels from China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan would be permitted to transit without interference, with Malaysian and Thai vessels later gaining access through direct diplomatic engagement. Read that carefully. Iran was operating the Strait as both a battlefield and a toll booth, selectively strangling Western economic interests while protecting its own trade relationships. The disruption's costs extended far beyond oil prices. Aluminum markets convulsed. Fertilizer prices spiked. Global helium supply chains were disrupted because a significant portion of global helium transits through the region. Qatar's primary LNG export facility was struck by Iranian drones, causing a fire and disrupting operations. Iran's targeting of Gulf energy infrastructure was not random. It was aimed at the specific nodes that would inflict maximum pain on global markets. The shipping insurance data tells the story in blunt financial terms. Before the conflict, war risk insurance premiums for Strait of Hormuz transit ran at roughly 0.125% of ship value per crossing. By the days immediately before full hostilities erupted, that had climbed to between 0.2 and 0.4% and up to 4% for a very large crude carrier, translating to an additional $250,000 per single crossing for a supertanker. Once the conflict fully erupted, war risk coverage was effectively withdrawn entirely by early March. The strait was closed not just by force, but by mathematics. This is why reopening it was never merely a military objective. It was a global economic emergency, the largest supply shock since the 1970s, and ultimately why 22 countries got involved. On March 19th, the leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada issued a joint statement condemning Iran's mine-laying, drone attacks, and blockade, and announced concrete contributions to restore safe passage. The United Kingdom became the coalition's operational anchor in one specific domain: mine clearance. The Royal Navy deployed unmanned mine-hunting drones and autonomous surface vehicles designed to detect and neutralize mines from a safe standoff distance, using acoustic and magnetic signature technology to trigger controlled detonations without risking human life. British military experts coordinated directly with American forces, and a Type 45 destroyer was deployed to the eastern Mediterranean with British bases made available for strike operations. The division of labor was precise. American strikes dismantled the threat from the air. British autonomous systems neutralized the invisible threat beneath the water. It is worth noting that before the March 19th joint statement, Australia, Germany, Greece, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom had all declined the initial request to send warships to the Strait. The pivot on March 19th was not principled multilateralism. It was economic pain. Oil prices surging past $120 per barrel, commodity markets in chaos, and European industrial supply chains straining were what turned reluctance into commitment. The alliance moved when the financial damage became impossible to ignore. With approximately 50,000 American military personnel deployed across the region, the operational capacity to sustain these efforts remained formidable. Ship crossing numbers tell their own story. Before the conflict, 138 ships per day transited the Strait. By mid-March, that had collapsed to 3. By the end of March, it had climbed back to approximately 15 per day, still far below normal, but unmistakably trending upward. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper stated plainly in a late March briefing that the lock on the Strait of Hormuz had not been fully opened yet, but the majority of the locking mechanism had been shattered. Military and energy analysts projected that 60 to 70% of normal Strait traffic could return within weeks if mine clearing operations proceeded as planned and if Iran could not successfully reconstitute its asymmetric capabilities. Those are two significant conditions, and neither is guaranteed. Stepping back from the specific events and examining what this operation actually demonstrated about modern warfare reveals something genuinely historic. What happened in the Strait of Hormuz was a live demonstration of what military analysts call multi-domain operations: the simultaneous integration of air power, autonomous maritime systems, precision underground strike weapons, intelligence networks, and targeted leadership elimination strikes, all synchronized to achieve a single strategic objective. No single element was sufficient alone. Stealth bombers could not neutralize the fast attack boats. Precision missiles could not penetrate underground bunkers. Autonomous drone boats could not destroy shore-based missile batteries. But combined and synchronized across domains and timelines, they dismantled a layered defense 4 decades in the making in a matter of weeks. The debut of the GBU-72 in live combat validated years of investment and demonstrated sophisticated strategic thinking. By deploying it instead of the larger, scarcer massive ordnance penetrator, planners preserved their most powerful tool for higher priority targets while still achieving decisive results. The autonomous drone boats point most directly at what is coming next in maritime warfare: unmanned surface vehicles conducting hundreds of hours of sustained patrol, capable of being redirected from surveillance to direct attack on command, paired with autonomous mine-hunting systems triggering controlled detonations without a single sailor at risk. This is the architecture of maritime warfare for the next generation of conflict. Iran understood the asymmetric warfare equation better than almost anyone. That is why it invested heavily in cheap, mass-producible threats, drones, mines, and fast attack boats. The theory was to overwhelm an adversary's ability to respond to individually cheap but collectively catastrophic tools. The fatal flaw in that theory was the assumption that the adversary would not develop autonomous systems capable of countering cheap threats at equally cheap cost. The autonomous patrol boats require no crew. The mine-hunting drones require no diver. The mathematics of asymmetric warfare shifted fundamentally, and the Strait of Hormuz is where that shift occurred for the first time in live combat. Iran's 40-year strategic doctrine is shattered. The Strait was always Tehran's ultimate leverage, its non-nuclear nuclear option. The assumption embedded in that doctrine was that any adversary would hesitate to pay the cost of dismantling it, that no country would accept the economic disruption, the military risk, and the sustained operational commitment required to actually take it apart. That assumption is dead. The cost was paid. Iran's shore-launched missile batteries are largely silent. Its naval fleet has been decimated, with over 150 vessels damaged or destroyed. Its underground missile stockpiles have been reduced by 90%. Its drone production facilities have been targeted. Its naval bases were struck in the opening hours. The architecture of the blockade, 40 years in the making, collapsed in weeks. But the question that cannot yet be fully answered is what comes after. Iran still has mobile launchers that survived. It still has drone production capacity. It still possesses the knowledge to rebuild. The mines in the Strait are still being cleared. The economic disruption is still being felt in oil prices, commodity markets, and shipping insurance rates. The full normalization of the Strait is a process, not an event, and that process is not complete. What has been demonstrated in the most consequential maritime choke point on Earth is a new model of power projection. Underground strike capability, autonomous surface warfare, persistent air dominance, and surgical decapitation strikes, all working together in a synchronized campaign that dismantled a hardened, layered defense in less than 5 weeks. That model will be studied by every military planner on Earth who is now asking what the next confrontation will look like, given what American multi-domain warfare has shown itself capable of in 2026. The answer to that question will define the balance of power for the decade ahead. The most acute phase of this conflict may be behind us, but the strategic consequences are only beginning to unfold.